Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hello, Ed. How are you?
Uh, I'm good. What's with your voice?
I'm in my Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice for today's Conan episode.
What, Conan? Why you got a funny hat on?
Not a hat, it's a tumor.
Look, we're not talking about Conan the Barbarian. We're talking about Thundarr the Barbarian.
Thundarr?
Yeah, thunder. You know, like thunder and lightning.
Oh, well, if we're talking about lightning, I shouldn't be holding this metal sword then, huh?
No, I probably wouldn't. Let's just start the show. Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
And this is Thundarr the Barbarian.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, thanks so much for joining us. If you are a regular viewer, thanks for coming back. Hope you enjoy the show. But Mitch, before we start our topic for today, what can you do if you want to find out a little bit more about our shows?
Oh, Ed, as easily as polishing your sun sword, just subscribe to the Mitch and Ed show, and we thank you. And you'll be able to watch us all the time. Plus, if you hit the little notification bell down there, you'll be notified when Ed and I go on another excellent adventure. And just for the heck of it, to make us feel good about ourselves, hit that old like button and tell us you like the show. So, Ed, I'm going to get my berserker rage on as we go looking at barbarian times.
That's right. We're heading to... Well, it's a weird time because it's actually in the future. We're heading to 3394 by way of 1980 and the cult, I suppose you'd call it a cult TV series cartoon, classic. Thundarr the Barbarian.
Thundarr the Barbarian. The time was 1980, Ed, and the Saturday morning TV landscape was a wasteland. It was a tundra waiting for Thundarr the Barbarian to come and save the day.
I feel like you're doing a wrestling promotion or something like that.
Like, yeah, brother, we're gonna get some real good cartoons now. So anyway, here's the deal. There was like not a lot of classic cartoons because they went cheap. Hanna-Barbera, they got the really, all that great movie animation they used to do when they showed cartoons before movies, that was all gone. Most of the studios like Warner Brothers and MGM, they had gotten rid of or dissolved their animation department because they didn't start showing those commercials. Well, they stopped showing those cartoons before the feature films. They just showed coming attractions now. So they all moved to TV, and TV was notoriously cheap. So they did not spend a lot of money on animation. In fact, Hanna-Barbera is the one that kind of came up with that real cheap way of doing cartoons where they would
reusing backgrounds and things like that.
Repeat backgrounds almost. They would paint one big thing and you'd see Yogi Bear walk by the same tree 1,000 times, or Superman would fly through space and the same planets would go by, because they were like, you know what, these kids aren't that sophisticated. They're not going to watch it on the internet because there is no such thing. You watched it once and that was it. You forgot about it. They didn't think we were going to obsess about it and study these things like famous paintings in a museum. So I believe it was only 24 frames a minute. There wasn't much animation. There might have been even less than that. It was just very stiff.
That is very stiff when it should, most film is 24 frames per second. So
yeah, they were doing slow stuff.
That's quite the thing. And it was, pretty rudimentary. And you spoke about Hanna-Barbera. Well, an offshoot of Hanna-Barbera, there were these two sound editors, Ruby and Spears, and they moved to script writing as well and did some stories for some of those. And they sort of created their own animation company called Ruby Spears, which I'm sure would be familiar to a few people out there.
Yeah, it was. It was one of those landscapes when you were a kid. I think we talked about it before. You always saw the Hanna-Barbera, the HB, and then there was the other fellow that did
Lou Scheimer.
Lou Scheimer, yeah, he did a bunch of shows, a lot of Tarzan and Batman and stuff. But Ruby Spears was new, and the thing that was so new about them is they hired, for people like me, classic comic book artists to come and help them with some of the layouts and the designs and stuff. And they got this fellow named Alex Toth. And what it was is he did all the designs and all that, but they went even further and hired Marvel comic legend, comic artist superior, Jack the King Kirby, to come on and do some design concepts and that too. So when you watch Thundarr the Barbarian, you've got two fantastic artists of their times coming together and designing the look of the show. And like you mentioned, the show takes place in the far future, but it was in 1994, Ed, that a runaway planet or a comet or whatever went by the Earth and just caused all kind of havoc. The moon split in half. We had giant tidal waves, earthquakes, everything was crazy, dogs and cats living together. And basically the Earth was a wasteland. But thousands of years later, out of the rubble and the ruins becomes a new age, an age of savagery and sorcery, as we have people like Thundarr, who was a barbarian who was like sentenced to fight in the arena, and he broke free and he went out just went out there and saved people. And then he brought his friend Ookla the Muck, who looks like a big lion
like
head.
Chewbacca.
He's an 8-bot. I didn't want to say that, but yeah. And then there was Princess Ariel, who was magic. Yeah, that Star Wars kind of had a heavy influence on it.
It did. When you look at the, look at his signature weapon, the sun sword, it's very lightsabery. Ookla looks a little Chewbacca-like.
Chewbacca.
And essentially the story is that Thundarr and Ookla are basically slaves. Princess Ariel, who is is sympathetic to their plight and saves them, releases them, and then they go on adventures. Against, there's a bunch of evil wizards, but there's also werewolves. There's all these amazing fantastical creatures. And really, I think what shines is, as you said, the wonderful art style of it. And the other thing is that every episode or other episode, there weren't many episodes, 21 I think, all in
21,
all.
that's it.
But you often see, like the Statue of Liberty, in decay, or you see maybe, the Golden Gate Bridge, or famous places,
famous
in the
U.S.
United
landmarks.
States.
They were in New York. They were Mount Rushmore was in it. Like you mentioned, the Statue of Liberty came to life, and they fought it. Thundarr and Ookla and Ariel had to fight a reanimated Statue of Liberty. We forgot to mention a Jack Kirby-esque bad guy called Gemini. He was a two-headed bad guy, and his head would swip around. He looks a lot like Darkseid.
He does.
The DC Comics big baddie there that also was created by Jack Kirby, but he had a look to him as well, and he had beams that shot out of his eye just like Darkseid did. But you know what's so cool about it? It was only 21 episodes, but it lasted a year and a half or so, a season and a half. But they were very, very original and creative because they were backed by a lot of great writers. Steve Gerber, who you might know from Howard the Duck fame over at Marvel Comics, he was one of the people that was on board the show. A guy named Marty Pasco, who I've had here at Terrificon, he was a writer on a lot of shows, like even like Chairs and stuff, but he was also a Superman comics writer. He was on the show, but they also had the guys that worked on Johnny Quest was on there. And there was another epic cartoon show. I think was it the Flash Gordon show, but they had a pool of very talented, original, imaginative type of comic book people. And they put that show together. And like you said, it was a little bit Conan the Barbarian. It was a lot of Star Wars. I mean, they had the sun sword. You had Ariel using magic, kind of like the Force and stuff. Ookla was talking and barks and grunts like Chewbacca. So yeah, I mean, I could see the influence of it. And you got to remember, we're talking 1980. The Empire Strikes Back had just come out in May. But when they do animated cartoons, they make them a year or so ahead of time because it takes a while. So I'm going to say that they saw Star Wars and they said, hey, let's do something. And then Conan the Barbarian was already around the comics. And it was kind of a mishmash of a bunch of things. There was a little Flash Gordon as well, because the Flash Gordon movie was coming out in 1980, and that was another revival type of thing. But yeah, I think the reason why so many people have fond memories of Thundarr the Barbarian is just because it wasn't like your typical Super Friends and all that. It was, dare I say, more adult in tone, or more imaginative, like John Carter of Mars. That
again, those I remember the bad guy with all the eyes all over him. And they were just like creatures that you didn't really see as a kid on TV, but you probably did see in the pages of some of those classic comic books. And I think you know, you were saying that it was 1980, 81. Like a lot of people probably didn't really know of Conan the Barbarian, you know, general public maybe, you know, didn't read the books or knew of his pulp origins. And the film, you know, the movie didn't come out
The
till
movie was coming out in
1982.
81.
And then you think, and then you think about also he does bear a striking resemblance to He-Man, you know, in his look.
Well,
He-Man was 1981, 82. That came out, you know, later.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all barbarians, so they've all got a certain, you know, furry underpants and, you know, that bowl cut.
I'm wearing it right now, Ed. I'm wearing it
good.
Right
I thought so. That's why we're only shooting from the top up.
No, exactly. And you know what, though? There is a little controversy around Thundarr the Barbarian because there was a paperback adventure novel in the early 70s called Thundarr, Thundar, only one. It wasn't spelled exactly the same. And guess what? It took place with the barbarian type of guy going into the future, having battles and all that type of thing. And they said, did Steve Gerber steal the idea from this? But you got to remember, there's a lot of pulp fiction, pulp novels, paperback novels in the early 70s. There wasn't, you know, VCRs and all that. And the newsstands used to be full of adventure books. I remember being a kid and you go to the bookstore and they'd have whole sections of just paperback books that were like, you know, 95 cents to $1.50 or something like that. And they were just full of these crazy adventures. Like Doc Savage was back. Conan the Barbarian actually came back again because they did a whole series as the Executioner. There was just tons of these series of books. And Thundarr, the original book, was just another one of these throwaway entertainments that, hey, maybe Steve Gerber read it on a lunch break or, you know, read it on a weekend and it just got mixed into his memory. And when he was sitting down, he just spit it back out because it does seem a little odd that it had the same name and all that. But it is what it is. And Steve Gerber's no longer with us, so we can't really lock it down. But
did you hear the story of how they came up with the name of ookla, the mock?
I believe it was from UCLA, the University of California in Los Angeles, because they just were walking down the street and they saw ookla the muck. Oh, that's the other thing too. There's mooks in that paperback novel that I just mentioned, but they're not big 8-foot gorillas. They're like 50-foot lizard creatures. So, but it is kind of odd that it's the same word, you know. It'd be like reading a book about a Wookiee and then years later you're like, hey, wait a minute,
there's that Wookiee. Yeah, I mean, those sort of things happen through, you know, osmosis, or who knows how those things happen. You know, you see something and then often something else appears and it's just unrelated. It's just the way it was. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm sure a lot more people, even though it wasn't hugely successful, a lot more people saw Thundarr the Barbarian than they did that original Thundarr, you know, book.
Paperback book. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, one of the things that we talked about here on our show was the King Kong movie.
Yes.
Which is, you can go back into our pages of shows. I think it's
I'll put it up. I'll put a link up there now.
Because in one episode, Thundarr meets a giant robot gorilla ape that's terrorizing this group, and it's a robot and it's left over from an old movie. Now, I don't believe that Dino De Laurentiis made a King Kong robot that could survive thousands of years into the future, but for story's sake, they just have it there. But it is a little nod to the King Kong craze.
And I wonder if you think that did Ivan Reitman see Thundarr the Barbarian and think, for Ghostbusters 2, maybe we can have a walking Statue of Liberty, you know?
Oh yeah, that's true too. And you know what? I was always getting the vibe from Planet of the Apes, because it was in the future, and when I saw the Statue of Liberty, the first thing you think of is Planet of the Apes. Another one of our more popular Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventures that you could also watch on our show.
You can check that out. Now, we always talk about merchandise and things like that with regards to all these series and movies, and there wasn't a lot of Thundarr the Barbarian merchandise. I think it sort of came and went, unfortunately, but there was a board game that did come out. Which is a little bit.
Wasn't a lunchbox.
Yeah, so no lunchbox, no trading cards, nothing like that.
No, you know what was going to come out? There was a Whitman. Now, Whitman are the people that made over here in the States, you'd get like coloring books and then you get some comic books. They would make, I don't know how they had the rights, but they would republish stuff. They did like Star Wars, the big treasury editions. I got them around here somewhere, but it was a Marvel book, but it would come out with the Whitman logo on it, and they would sell that in grocery stores. Whitman had bought the rights, and they actually wrote the story for a Thundarr the Barbarian coloring book and a new set of comic books that were supposedly all done. The artwork was done in that, but they had money problems and they went down and they went out of business in the early 80s. So there goes the Thundarr coloring book, the Thundarr comic book. Never saw the printing press, never saw the light of day. That was gone. And you're right, because of the cult following of Thundarr the Barbarian, it's alive and well on DVDs like this. And there was, of course, a Funko Pop set of 3. You had Ariel, Ookla, and Thundarr himself, Funko Pops. And there was a action figure line that came out about 10 years ago. I'm going to say 2011. Very expensive now in the aftermarket. I actually have the Ookla the Muck with a broken leg because my son Owen ripped the leg off. But I wish I kept it in the plastic. My friend Steve kept his in the plastic and sold them all on eBay for about $150 each.
Wow.
Or more. So yeah, they really went there. And it's talked about all the time. Like they're going to make a Thundarr the Barbarian movie, or they're going to make a comic book, or they're going to make a live action movie. I've heard rumors of that, but nothing ever comes to pass. I don't know why. I mean, it's he shows up now and then, like you'll be watching Family Guy or whatever. And one of his classic lines that I should have screamed out in the opening of the show, "Demon Dogs," but I did not. Or Lords of Light. He had his own little like trademark sayings and such. So it's like a little code between us Thundarr fans. If you bump into somebody and you scream out Lords of Light, they're hip to what you're talking about.
That's right. So or they'll just look at you strangely, as that often happens. But that's to both.
Did they have Thundarr the Barbarian in the Land Down Under?
Sorry?
Was the Land Down Under a fan of Thundarr?
Well, I remember watching it as a kid. So
okay. I didn't know if
it was shown here. I would dare I say it. I think we came out here maybe a bit later. Maybe it was like 81, 82. But I do remember watching it and enjoying it and thinking, that's kind of I think I liked it because it was a bit Star Warsy. It wasn't Star Warsy, but it had throwbacks to it. So, and I loved Ookla's horse.
It was like a weird
Ecord, I think it is. Ariel and Thundarr, they rode regular horses, but he had an Ecord which reminded me actually of the space horses in the final Star Wars film.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah. As soon as I saw those, I thought, that reminded me of Thundarr the Barbarian. So there
were some famous voices in there. I know one of the bad guys was Fred Flintstone's voice.
Yeah, and the voice of the narrator at the start is the voice of, now I don't remember his name, but the voice actor who was the robot in Lost in Space.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Warning, Will Robinson, danger. That's that guy?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I know that one of the people was Oppenheimer. He was the voice of Skeletor. He was one of the bad guy voices on there.
Yep.
And because they only had a small pool of voice actors back then. It's not like now when there's like hundreds of people and movie stars that want to be celebrity voiceovers. But no, back then they had a stable of like 10 guys that they went to, women too, that you'd hear the same voices again and again and again.
Yeah, I do know that Michael Ansara appeared as one of the villains because he appears in everything, I think.
Oh, he was the voice of Mr. Freeze on the Batman show.
Okay, yes. And appeared in, Buck Rogers, many things.
Oh, Buck Rogers, I Dream of Jeannie, Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine. He was on a lot of stuff.
But
no, it's a great show. It's a fun show. Like I said, you can buy the DVD on Amazon and watch it. 21 episodes. It's not going to kill you to watch the whole series, and it's very creative, and it's not your normal run-of-the-mill 80s cartoon. And like you said, it laid the groundwork for He-Man and all the other stuff that would come after it. So
absolutely. And you might have you might find a special place in your heart for this if you haven't heard of it before. So go out and find it. And you know what you can do? You might find a special place in your heart for some other, sort of obscure movies or TV shows by looking at some of our other shows that we have covered. And how could you do that, Mitch?
Oh, Ed, it's simple. Just go to our channel and you'll see over 60 something episodes of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. And we talk about everything. So, don't be a big ookla. By the way, ookla also could have came from Kukla Frana Ali, which was a show here about puppets in the 70s. I don't know. I always heard the UCLA thing, so I'm going with that one. But I have heard his name came from
we can neither confirm nor deny that, but I've heard that too.
And he's not talking.
No.
Ookla, not talking. You know what this show reminds me of? I think we talked about it once before.
The
Hanna-Barbera. Yeah, I was going to say the Hanna-Barbera Power Hour.
Yes.
Which was like, there was the Herculoids, but there was another guy. Wasn't Captain Caveman, but Thundarr. There was another superhero guy with a club that shot out a ray that it flew around. It wasn't the Herculoids. The Herculoids were like Thundarr, but there was another superhero caveman type of guy.
If
it was like Space Ghost.
Okay,
like
well, if we can figure it out before this goes live, I'll put it in right now. Otherwise,
or if somebody's smart in those comments that they
please,
they could write it on the bottom there, because I know there was another show about a superhero caveman, and not certainly Captain Caveman.
Yep, not Captain Caveman. And certainly, if you do have any suggestions for topics that we should look at, or something you disagree with, that's absolutely fine. We're not experts.
I forgot to mention.
Yes,
I forgot to mention, Mr. I Love Laverne and Shirley. You know why Thundarr the Barbarian was canceled?
Because Laverne and Shirley went into the army and they needed a cartoon series.
And they needed to get people, and they cleared the decks, and they wiped out Thundarr, and they brought in Laverne and Shirley, go to the army. Now, I don't even remember that show. No one remembers that cartoon. I don't think I ever watched one episode.
I remember
it. Was you. You watched it?
Well, it didn't run very long at all. I remember.
I was going to say why? Why?
Because I liked that and the Happy Days gang.
Happy
that
Days show. Yeah, the Happy Days gang.
Maybe we sort of talked about that in our Happy Days episode. I think we touched on it at any rate. So
no, but what was Laverne and Shirley Go to the Army? What was it?
It was just a cartoon show of them in, like doing training and
Why were they in the army? Why?
I don't know.
Why were they in the army? Did they get drafted? They didn't draft women back in the 50s.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, here we go.
Stupid.
There's our next show. Is that our next show?
We're gonna do Laverne and Shirley.
Let's
just.
We should. We've done Happy Days, so
I want to find out why they wasted Thundarr the Barbarian for such a stupid idea. It had Penny Marshall and Sidney Williams attached.
Yeah. Well, if you know, put your comment down below, and we'll discuss that next time. But that's it for Thundarr the Barbarian. It's a great show. Do check it out. And thanks for checking out our latest episode. Signing off for this week. This is Ed Dollister.
And this is Mitchell the Mook. Or Muck. Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.